Okay, this is the second half of Chapter 10b Study Guide, the graphing of sines, cosines, tangents, cosecants, secants, and cotan. Okay, so the first half we did sine, cosine, and secant. No, cosecant. Today we're doing secant, or this time, secant, tangent, and cotangent. And that will be all 6 of them. We'll do 3 per video. Okay. So, oops. I always forget to switch that up. There we go. All right. So, secant. Just like in cosine, we do, I'm sorry, I'm also changing colors and setting up my colors. Okay, just like in cosecant, we have an underlying function. In this case, it's cosine, and so we have to express that. We have to say we're going to be graphing a y equals cosine x function. We state our underlying function. Okay, now we're going to list our characteristics. Amplitude is 1. Period is 2 pi. Horizontal and vertical shift are 0. And it's not rotated. All right, so that being said, we're going to mark our tick marks. 2 pi. Pi over 2. 3 pi over 2. Minus 2 pi. Minus pi. Minus pi over 2. Minus 3 pi over 2. Our amplitude is 1, so we go from -1 to 1. All right, now, our underlying function is cosine, so it starts up at A, or 1 in this case, and then we have our roller coaster shape, so it goes to 0, then to -1, back to 0, back up to 1. Keeping our roller coaster shape, we have these points. Okay, so that's my underlying cosine function. Now I lay down my asymptotes through the zeros. Okay, and there we go. All right, so our last step is to draw our function through the given maxes and mins. So for the maximum, we draw an upwards U. For the minimums, we draw downwards. Remember, if we're supposed to have 4 of these, well, because we only have little half ones here, we do this. Because those two together would make my 4th. Okay, that's my basic secant, y equals secant x function. Okay, so now we're going to do some changes. We have a period change here, and we have amplitude. Oh, we do have a period. This is a sneaky period. The period is 1/4. That's our B is 1/4. So that's what we're going to use to find the period. So that was pretty sneaky. And we also have a horizontal shift. Remember, we're going to have to switch the sign. Okay, so we have, underlying function first. We're going to graph y equals, 2/3 cosine. 2/3 cosine x over 4. That's what we're going to graph first. Sorry, I'm having bad allergies. Okay, so my amplitude is 2/3. My period is 2 pi over 1/4. So I flip and multiply, I end up with a period of 8 pi. Pretty big. Okay. Now I have a horizontal shift. And that's going to be pi over 2 over 1/4. Flip and multiply, I end up with 2 pi. You want to see that? Yeah, okay, you probably do want to see that. Okay. Make the equal sign a little smaller. So I have pi over 2, and I'm flipping. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So this gives me 2 pi. All right, my v shift is none. And, oops, this was a negative because of the plus there. And no vertical shift and no rotation because it's just positive 2/3. All right, so we have 8 pi half of that is 4 pi. Half of that is 2 pi. 3 times that is 6 pi. Pretty simple. Minus 8 pi minus 6 pi minus 4 pi minus 2 pi. My amplitude is 2/3, so if I set this as 1, then this becomes 2/3. All right. Okay, and I have a horizontal shift of 2 pi, which is going to be just 1 tick mark, so that'll be easy. All right, first step. Graphing our y equals 2/3 cosine pi over. So this is a cosine function based on this graph. So I have cosine starts up at amplitude, or A, rotates down and down, back to 0, and back up to 2/3. So maintaining my roller coaster pattern, I have these points. Okay. Now, I have to do my horizontal shift before I can do my asymptotes. So, my horizontal shift is 2 pi. It's a negative 2 pi. So, everything is going to shift backwards 2 pi. Now, if you notice, this guy is going to shift completely off. So what I'm going to do all right, I can put that on there if I want to. I could shift this all the way over. Sorry, and put a point here. But I could also bring an extra point on this side. So I could graph either one of those two endpoints. Still would be an accurate graph. It's your choice which you want to do. All right, now I have my asymptotes. They're going to go, whoops, I haven't moved my zeros. Good. All right, so they all actually move back to the same, its previous location, a different one's previous location. Okay, so this is how you would do that. Okay, now I draw in my asymptotes through the zeros. Since I'm going to graph these in a different color, since I'm going to put the graph itself down in a different color, I can use the blue and do solid lines instead of dotted lines. On the iPad, the dotted lines don't work really well. Okay, so now we're going to graph this. So I'm going to come up 1, 2, 3. Oh, there's my 4. I guess I don't really need to graph anymore. I've got 4. Yep. Alrighty. Yay. Okay. Now we're down here. Okay, what are we going to graph? We're going to graph y equals -2 cosine 4x. It has an amplitude of 2, but remember, that's a negative. So go ahead and write your rotated down at the bottom. My period is going to be 2 pi divided by 4, which gives me pi over 2. My horizontal shift is going to be 0. My vertical shift is -1. Okay. Now remember, on your final on your, not final, that's the problem, chapter test, you're going to have either a secant or a cosecant. You have to know both because you might have either one. You're going to have a sine, guaranteed, and a cosine, guaranteed. Now, how they shift and stuff, I'm not going to tell you. That's why we're going over all of these. You're also going to have either a tangent or a cotangent. So you're going to have 4 graphs: sine, cosine, cosecant or secant, tan or cotan. So you need to be prepared for any of those. All right, our period is pi over 2, so we're going to mark up our tick marks now. All right, I'm not talking much. Negative pi over, and then 3 times the negative pi over 8. So it's 3/8. There we go. And our amplitude is 2. Okay, whoops, it's -2. There we go. All right, so we're going to do our underlying. Remember, it's rotated. So I'm going to graph our underlying function. It's a cosine function. Starts at a, which in this case is -2. And then we have our roller coaster function. So it goes to 0, and then up to 2, 0, and back down to -2. So this is going to give us our roller coaster shape. All right, back up to 0, maintaining our roller coaster shape. There we go. All right, we have to apply horizontal shifts before we can draw asymptotes. Our horizontal shift happens to be 0, so I can go ahead and draw asymptotes right now, right through the zeros. Remember, that's because where cosine is 0, secant, which is its reciprocal, becomes 1 over 0, which is undefined, and gives us an asymptote. All right. Okay, so now we apply our vertical shift. Our vertical shift was -1, so they're going to all drop 1 unit. So oops, I didn't need that one. There we go. And that's not a drop. There we are. All right, and now we draw in our graph using our blue dots. And there we go. So that's our secant function. Now we're going to go move on to our tan and cotan, but please be careful when you're graphing these on the test. Okay. Moving on to tangent. All right, couple of changes. Remember, tangent has a period of pi, not 2 pi. Everything else is pi. Tan, cotan are 2 pi. All right, just trying to set up my board. It's driving me crazy. All right. All right, we're going to do just a basic tan, cotan function right now. So, characteristics. Remember, there is indeed an amplitude. There's a period of pi for tan and cotan. We have no shifts, so H and V shift are 0. Okay, so this is pi over 2, pi over 4, 3 pi over 4. Go mark this one, negative pi over 2, negative pi over 4, negative 3 pi over 4. Okay, now our amplitude is 1. So we go 1 and minus 1. Okay. Now, okay. Remember, we have asymptotes for these. Now, the tangent, remember, is half the period. So our first, oops, let's do this in a different color. I like red for my asymptotes for some reason. Okay, so that's where I'm going to have my asymptotes. Now, remember, for the shape of a tangent, you start, it's tan and cotan, you start in the very middle with a 0. So I have a 0 here, and I have a 0 here, and I'm going to have a 0 there, okay? We know this because basically I do have an extra asymptote out here. They're pi apart. Okay, so now this is just a matter of remembering the shape. If it can help you, remember that in the first quadrant, which this section right here would be my first quadrant, 0 to pi over 2. Tangent is positive. So it's going to be, I gotta change colors. I do have to, nope, let's go to green. Okay, I'm going to change that to green. All right, in the first quadrant, it's positive, so it's a positive 1. It's just a matter of having to remember this shape. Okay, now tangent, that's flipped. It would be up at pi over 4. Well, technically it isn't pi over 4. Well, I'll explain when we get there. All right, so I have this same pattern of numbers. So I'm going to have that, and I'm going to have one here, there, and here. Okay, so all I have to do is graph this. And there we go. That is a standard tangent function. All right, let's now look at this one which now has some amplitude changes and a horizontal shift and period change. Okay, so what do we have? Our amplitude is 1/3. Our period, instead of 2 pi over b, is pi over b. So I have a period of pi over 3. I have a horizontal shift, of plus pi over 2 over 3. Remember, if I flip and multiply, this is now going to be pi over 6 and a plus pi over 6. My vertical shift is 0. All right, so our period is 2 pi. We're going to mark our tick marks. Sorry, our period is pi over 3. Multiply the denominator by 2, and again, and then 3 times that, well, 3 over 12 would give me a 4th. So this is going to be pi over 4. All right, now I have to do the negatives. Pi over 6 times 2 is pi over 12. I'm talking about the denominator times 2. And 3 pi over 12 becomes pi over 4. Now, my amplitude was 1/3, so I'm going to just go ahead and mark this 1/3. I don't have to overly think about that because I do not have a vertical shift. Okay, if I had a vertical shift, and especially if it was a big number, I might make these smaller. But I do a standard one like this for no vertical shift. Horizontal shift is not going to affect it. Okay, now, asymptotes. All right, nope, no asymptotes. Gotta do vertical shift. Gotta do horizontal shift. Sorry, okay. We're gonna mark where the asymptotes are supposed to go. Pi over 6 and negative pi over 6. Goodness gracious, no negatives on my negative numbers here. Wow. All right, pi over 6. That's where my asymptotes are supposed to go. But I have a pi over 6 shift, which is 2 tick marks. So that means that this one shifts, it's plus. So this guy is going to shift up here. And this guy is going to shift to here. All right, now it's just true that I'm also going to have a guy shifting in from over here to there, right? Because I'm going by 2 tick marks. All right, now through the blues, I can plot my asymptotes. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to plot my points. I have a point in the very middle. Okay, we're going to do, yeah. Right in the middle of my asymptotes. I go forward and up, a little too high. Forward and up, backwards and down for tangent. Backwards and down. Okay, there we go. Now, I can draw my line. Let's see. I don't see any green on there right now, so I'm gonna... And there we go. Pretty straightforward. All right, let's look at the next one. Now, I go pretty fast between these and don't get you time to catch up, but that's because you can pause the video. Sorry. Okay, remember with that 2, there's a negative, so it's rotated. Period is pi over 8. I have no horizontal shift. But I do have a vertical shift of -1. All right, so period is pi over 8. I have to go here and start marking these. Pi over 8. Well, if I multiply 8 by 2, I get 16. So this is pi over 16. And again, now it's pi over 32. I need 3 of those, so it's 3 pi over 32. That does not simplify. Negative pi over 8, negative pi over 16, negative pi over 32. 3 of them. 3 pi over 32. Don't forget to make it negative. Now my amplitude was 2. Okay, and we have a vertical shift of -1. I don't want it to drop too far. So what I'm going to do is make that 1, 2, 3. And -1, -2, -3. Okay, so that when I drop, I'm not going to drop too far. All right, now I plot where my asymptotes are supposed to go. No horizontal shift, so they don't change. So that means I can draw in my asymptotes. Okay. Now I'm going to plot my points. I start at 0 in the middle of my asymptotes. I go forward 1 and up to A. Whoops. Negative. This was rotated. There we go. Okay, so instead I go forward, and it's rotated, so it goes down to -2. Same with this one. I go back. I'm supposed to go down, but it's rotated. So I go to the opposite of A, which it was -2. So there we go. So this is going to be shaped the other direction. Alrighty, now we're going to draw this in. We're going to come down the asymptote, swing out, catch my dots, and go back down. There we go. Tangent, shifted, pi, or half a period, really. Okay. Let's look at cosine, and then we'll be done. Oh, that's right. I still need to go and show you the final page, which just kind of tells you what I'm looking for more specifically, in case you forget. Okay. This is now a cotan. So we have, just like on our... Oh, well, let's be consistent and not put my amp first. My amplitude is 1. My period is pi. My H shift is 0. My V shift is 0. All right. So let's see what we've got here. Mark our tick marks. Negative pi over 2, negative pi over 4, negative 3 pi over 4. Amplitude goes from -1 to 1. All right. Now, on this one, it's a little bit different with our asymptotes. Our asymptotes go 0, 0 to pi. Remember our tangents, that's where I had zeros. So now that I'm doing a 1 over tangent, a cotan, where tan was 0 gives me now an asymptote. So that's an asymptote, that's an asymptote, and I have one back here at negative pi as well. All right, now I draw in my shape. Middle, I start with 0, just like in tangent, but now it's flipped from tangent because my positive is now back here in the first quadrant and my third quadrant is over here is negative. Okay, so Whoops, too high. There we are. Oh, that one was a little too low as well. Let's get rid of this guy and redo him a little higher. There we go. Okay, now we're going to draw in, and we come down the asymptote, swing out, catch the points. Okay, and that, folks, is a tangent function. Cotangent function. All right, so now we're going to do it with some changes to it. Okay, so we have... I'm doing it again. All along I was doing amp first, and now I'm doing period. Amplitude of 3. Period is pi over pi, so that's 1. I have a horizontal shift. And that is pi over 2 over pi. So the two pi's being numerators cross out, and I end up with a horizontal shift of 1/2. Okay, and my vertical shift is 0. 3 is not negative, so there is no rotation. All right, so we have 1. Put these negative. Oops. All right, my amplitude was 3. Alrighty. All right, remember my standard asymptotes are here, here, and here. But this one has a horizontal shift of 1/2. Double check. It's a plus, so it's actually a minus 1/2. So each of these are going to go backwards 1/2, which is half of your period or 2 tick marks. So they all go back 1/2. Okay, so that one is going there. That one went there. That one went there. Okay, now I draw asymptotes through those. All right, plot my points. In the middle of the asymptotes, I have my 0. This is 3. Okay, so I go backwards and up to A. Forwards and down to negative A. Okay, I set these up in the other quadrants here. And there we go. Oops, I forgot to mark the center one, didn't I? Bad. All right. This has a horizontal shift of pi over 2. Well, actually, of negative 1/2. And an amplitude of 3 and a period change to 1. All right, let's do our last one here. I know you're getting tired. All right. Amplitude, negative 1/2. Well, this means it is indeed rotated. I have a period change of pi over 2. I have a H shift of 0 and a V shift of +3. Okay. My period is pi over 2. All right, my amplitude was 1/2, but I'm vertically shifting at 3, so I need it to be fairly small. So that's going to be my 1/2. Negative 1, 2. So this is how this gets really high fast. So if this is 1, this is 2. That's going to be 3, and I'm going to end up shifting all the way up to 3.5. So recognize that you have to make it pretty darn small when you're stuck. There we go. Okay. All right, so first step, asymptotes. Asymptotes are at 0 and period and negative period. And there's no horizontal shift, so don't have to worry about that at this point. So, there we go. There we are. Okay, we're doing tangent, which means we go forward and down this time. It's going to be this really tiny little flatness in here in the middle. All right, now we have a vertical shift of 3, so we have to shift this way up there. So we go 1, so this top guy here becomes up to 3.5. Wow, I just noticed this blue dot isn't anywhere near the actual tick mark. There we go. Okay, and then this is in the middle. So this one is going to be coming down the asymptote, coming out and going down. See, that's why we had to be careful with this getting quite this high. So we go up, this is a maximum, so it goes up to here. This one is right in the middle. This one is down a bit. There we go. It's going to come up. You go like that. Okay, so that's all of our graphing. Woohoo! I will do one more video, and that will be of the multiple choice. There's only 5 questions on the multiple choice. So you're going to have 4 graphs and 5 multiple choice questions. So it's really not going to be that bad. Okay. Good luck.